What were some of your withdrawal symptoms, if you don't mind sharing?
I felt like I went completely crazy. Like I would call my dad at work and be like, I'm going crazy. Like my mind would race 1,000 miles a minute. I forgot my name, my birthday. So I had tons of like terrible memory problems. One of the more distressing ones is something called depersonalization and derealization, where you feel just sort of trapped inside yourself, like you're not real and the world is not real. It's like dissociation, essentially. Crippling panic and anxiety that was just constant for no reason. Insomnia. I had a symptom called akathisia, which leads a lot of people to suicide. It's like an incessant urge to move and pace where you can't sit still. Burning
Tell about
skin.
your feet, Nicole, when you had the akathisia.
I just paced until my feet were like bloody and blistered because I could not stop moving. And some people have that for years where they just frantically pace all over the place.
If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I love this lifestyle, but sometimes it feels incredibly lonely, we want you to know that you are not meant to do this by yourself.
That's right. This is why we started our Patreon community. It is a place for moms who are trying to feed their families well, make thoughtful choices, and just do their best, and to actually connect with other moms who get it.
In our Patreon community, you can ask questions, share wins, vent on hard days, and get real encouragement from people walking the same road.
If you are craving that support and community, we would love to welcome you over on Patreon. Check the show notes for the link, or you can just head straight to patreon.com/Modern Ancestral Mamas. Welcome to Modern Ancestral Mamas. We are Corey and Christine, two millennial moms on a mission to bring ancestral wisdom to modern motherhood. Okay, guys, today's conversation is vastly different than anything we have ever done before. And after stumbling upon the documentary Medicatinɡ Normal, we felt it was imperative to bring up the conversation about the harm psychiatric drugs can have and the importance of informed consent. So for today's podcast, we are going to be interviewing Lynn Cunningham and Nicole Lamberson, which are two women who worked on the film, and they helped get the word out about the safety and efficacy of psychiatric drugs. So please welcome Lynn and Nicole to today's show. So there's going to be 4 voices today, guys. It might be a little confusing. So Lynn, can you say hello, please?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Cunningham.
And Nicole.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Nicole Lamberson.
Awesome. All right.
Good. All right. Everybody's introduced themselves. All right. So we usually start our shows with a kind of roundtable question, just like an icebreaker to get us going. And we can answer it in whatever order you guys feel like you want to go for. But today's question is, if you could change one thing about how our society approaches mental health, what would it be? Does anybody have a burning answer?
Well, my answer would be to stop medicalizing all mental anguish. I think that's our biggest. Somehow it got put into the medical camp, and while medicine can help with many, many issues, I think it's more of an issue of the emotions, the heart, circumstance. That would be my first off-the-cuff answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd so agree. I think we just cast the net far too wide, too, for like who we're capturing under this umbrella of so-called mental health disorders. We're just pathologizing normal human responses to our environment. But also beyond that, I think people don't have tools for coping with distress. I know when I was coming off psychiatric medications myself, which we'll talk more about, the distress I felt in withdrawal from them was way worse than the distress I even took the drugs for in the first place. And so I had to quickly learn coping tools for being in severe, severe distress. And I thought to myself, if anyone had taught me, like as a kid or younger person, things like yoga, how exercise can impact your mental health. And you guys are ancestral. So food is a huge part of how we feel, and our moods and all of that. So I just think we are a quick fix society. We Band-Aid everything instead of getting to the root cause. And it's quicker, but we need to ask ourselves, is it working? Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's quicker in the short term, but is it really a long-lasting answer in the bigger picture? I love both of those answers. Corey and I have interviewed a few anthropologists on our show before, and after listening to their conversations, I think one of our biggest issues is actually community. We are so isolated in our society nowadays. We live in these, brick prisons, and we don't interact with other people around us. Many of us don't even know our neighbors. And I think that when we're talking about coping mechanisms, ancestrally, there were, tribes of people living very intimately together, and they were constantly talking about problems or, and anything that would come up. There was always communication amongst each other. And I feel like we are lacking community. And that could be a huge resource for helping people out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even if you look at
one more thing, the intergenerational fragmentation, like you just think who, lives near their grandparents anymore, and who, the elderly are put over here and the young are put, it just feels like we need different ages, the mix is gone, sort of. Yeah.
So Christine and I have both in the past 4 years, within the last 4 years, made huge moves with our families to intentionally be near our parents. And my grandmother now lives down here too. And I'm with Christine on this. I think I don't know much about the mental health industry at all. So I'm really interested to have this conversation with you. But any time that I have ever been in, for example, after I had my first child, I was in this like super dark place. And part of that, looking back on it, is because I didn't have a support system like at all. There was nobody around, and my husband was working ridiculous hours, and I just felt so totally abandoned by everybody. And I don't think that was the only thing. Obviously, postpartum, there's a lot of things going on. But I think that was a big part of what was happening with me at that point in my life. So anyway, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. Usually we don't do a whole give your bio at the beginning of the show, but I do think that maybe you guys, if you could, not a bio, but just a really short, who you are and why this is important to you. And then that will lead from there into talking about the film a little bit more. So if you both could kind of give a short intro, that'd be really helpful.
I am the director and co-producer of the film Medicatinɡ Normal. My partner is Wendy Ratcliffe, and my professional background is in filmmaking. I started out editing documentaries. And this film has really, in a way, transformed me from a filmmaker into an activist. I got so into what I was discovering with this film, which was a whole nother world. Unless you yourself are going through a mental health struggle, or you have an immediate family member, it can be, just like you were saying, Corey, it can be very removed. But working on this film, which started, 8 to 10 years ago, we really started the research on it. We dove into and discovered an entire world that we really knew nothing about. So, so now I'm a filmmaker, but also an activist. I'm a mother. I'm a community member. So what I feel is intriguing about the film Medicatinɡ Normal is that because after it was finished, we did not stop working on it. And this is where Nicole comes in and played a really important role. We really felt that it had to be seen, it had to be discussed by people in venues wherever we could, libraries, medical schools across the country and even internationally. And what we tried to do, and which was the most rewarding, is to set up panels where you would have sort of various stakeholders, a doctor, a psychiatrist, a GP, a therapist, someone with lived experience, and all these different perspectives played into the post-film discussion. And then the most important part of the post-film discussion is the audience, because their questions and their real experiences then added a whole nother level of richness to the film. So it's almost like the film was made, yes, and we have a whole story we can tell about it, but it is living on, and it is now on YouTube and pretty much available everywhere in 13 languages. So anyway, that's my background, but also why I think this is so important.
Nicole.
Yeah, so my name is Nicole Lamberson, and like Lynn said, I work doing outreach for the film Medicatinɡ Normal. I met Lynn because I'm in the community of people who have suffered from psychiatric medications. I'm actually a physician assistant as well. I haven't practiced in a while because I became so ill from psychiatry that I had to stop working. So I consider myself also a survivor of psychiatry. That might sound dramatic to some, but I survived psychiatry. There's no question about it. And I also do some coaching now for others who are still in the midst of psychiatric drug withdrawal. I work with various psychiatrists in this space who are aware of the problems with psychiatry and psychiatric drugs. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow. Oof. I know, it was an incredible documentary. Okay. I think for our listeners who have not watched it, can you please give just a brief description of what the film is about? And also, I'm really interested in why you became interested in this topic.
Okay, so the quick synopsis of the film is that it really is about something Corey said earlier, or maybe you, Christine. It's about informed consent. So it follows 5 characters, all of whom had legitimate issues before the film began, which sort of drew them to psychiatry. And they all were prescribed medication of different kinds, benzodiazepines or anti-anxieties, antidepressants. And they all, did have legitimate reasons for going to a psychiatrist. One had sleep issues. Mm-hmm. And the film sort of begins when these 5 characters, not one of them is actually did okay on her medication and did not feel it was making her dysfunctional. But most of the characters felt worse after they had started their psychiatric medications and were wondering, why did I go on them? And maybe I should be getting off of them, and then beginning to feel, that they're better after. But one of the huge things that the film brings up is what Nicole was referring to as psychiatric drug withdrawal. And so all of these characters come face to face with the fact that you cannot just get off of these medications. They must be tapered slowly and carefully, because the body, Nicole will go into this, develops a dependency on these chemicals, not like a drug dependency, not like you're a seeking drug addict, but your body physically is dependent on taking a drug every day. And so I think the film is about informed consent, like learn about what you're supposed to be, what these drugs do and why, and then learn about what, how long you're supposed to be on them for, and can you get off of them easily. So those are the two, I think, takeaways. And I got into this because I have a beloved family member who was a star athlete, Phi Beta Kappa in college, number 3 on the Harvard women's squash team, unbelievably high functioning individual, was had something happen to her in her early 20s, trauma, and was started on these meds. And by the age of 30, she was completely dysfunctional. She was on disability, unable to work. And this was just like, it was a beautiful mind. I don't know whether you've seen that film, but it's just like a person who could have given so much to our society was just rendered completely dysfunctional with no end in sight. No one told her, oh, these drugs, you can eventually get off of them. Anyway, that got me into researching. I just started to read, what are they for? What are they being prescribed for? How long? Why are they being given willy-nilly? Like you can have 3 diagnoses, but still be taking the same type of psychiatric drug. There are many, many inconsistencies. And if, again, I cared and loved someone going through it, so I looked into it. But I think so many of us don't look into it. We just blindly trust our doctors and our medical system. Is that a good?
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Nicole, did you join them after the making of the film, or?
Yeah, after.
Okay. And it sounds like because of your history, that was your motivation to help get the word out.
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, it's so hard to bring this topic up in a succinct way. And I think the film does that really well. And it's a good conversation starter. And, it presents the topic in a very condensed, sort of easy to digest, platform, without all of the, because there's scary kind of offshoots that the film didn't really go into. Things like protracted withdrawal, where people are in withdrawal for years post coming off the medications. And so sometimes you can lose people if you get too in the weeds with all of the potential outcomes. And so I think the film does a really good job of just like making it a good sort of conversation starter.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. It was, when I saw it, it was one of the things I told Corey. I said, this is literally a world I know nothing about. Like it just blew my mind that there are so many people in the US living like this. And you're right that it did a very good job of explaining everything very just, cut and dry, really easy to understand. I was able to pick up on the nuances that you just mentioned about several years withdrawal. What did you call that?
Protracted withdrawal.
The protracted withdrawal. There was 2 individuals in the documentary that had said, I've been 4 years without psychiatric drugs, and I'm still dealing with the withdrawal symptoms and the ramifications of what those drugs did to me. So that's just, oh my goodness.
And when we were researching, going around and talking to doctors and talking to psychiatrists around the country, the inconsistency in any knowledge about this. Some would have knowledge and say, yeah, but the inconsistency, there isn't a body of knowledge where this stuff is known, because, it comes down to the fact that it's simply not being taught in the medical schools. How many interviews we've had where you say, well, it's really easy to get people on psychiatric drugs, but, why would anyone, why would the big pharma or the medical schools teach anyone how to get them off of them, because it just isn't, there's no incentive to get people off of the drugs. It would be great if people were on them for a lifetime. So we couldn't find anyone who really knew how to taper. And the tapering, just cut it in half and every other day. And then some people would say no, they would say more accurately, go down slowly. But there was no consistency, which I found amazing.
Corey and I dabble a lot in holistic health and ancestral nutrition. And one of the things that we found similarly to that is doctors don't get any nutrition education at all. None. They don't know anything. And so it's very, very similar in the nutrition world, where they are giving false or incorrect information about anything nutritionally. And what I find bizarre is, we know that they are taught about pharmaceutical drugs. That is the majority of their education in medical school. So why is it that they aren't taught, like you said, how to properly how to get their clients off of these drugs? They're only taught them, they're only taught how to prescribe them, but not actually how to get off of them. So I don't know. But quick question, just so we can give our listeners some numbers. How widespread is psychiatric drug use in the US? And how early are people now being prescribed these medications?
Well, I think the numbers have gone way up, and they definitely did during the pandemic. But in our film, our statistic is 1 in 5. And
I think that's adults.
Yeah, 1 in 5
US.
adults.
Yeah.
And children, what, Nicole?
I don't have the latest numbers on kids, but one of the clients that I coach got started on her antidepressant age 7, and she's almost 40 now.
Oh my gosh.
There's younger kids, especially in the foster care system, that are drugged. So yeah, I'd have to do some research to answer the kids number, but it's happening for sure.
And what are we talking about when we're talking about, what are you guys considering these psychiatric drugs or issues to be? Like, is it all anxiety? Is it depression? Is it also including, I don't know, like ADHD or?
All of the above.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of the above.
People are medicated for perimenopause, for back pain. Psychiatric drugs.
Right, but are those considered is that what we're talking about in the realm of psychiatric drugs?
We're talking about everything with the exception of opioids. Opioids have been pretty accepted by society as being very, very problematic.
Right. And
I think I would say everything else that one is prescribed, the ADHD meds early on. Some people are helped by them, I imagine, but they're given, 3rd grade. The ADHD, what happens is the ADHD meds have side effects, and you put someone on an ADHD med and then they need something to calm down at night. And so there's a second drug added. So all of these drugs have add-ons that deal with side effects, and nobody's ever tested what's called polypharmacy. No one's ever tested the impact, especially on a small child, of getting these not repeated doses
multiple
types of medications.
Yeah. Boy.
So something just like Corey said, back pain, you could get a psychiatric drug for back pain.
Yeah. You could get Valium is used a lot as a muscle relaxer. But, it's also used for people with insomnia and anxiety. And so that's how we know that they cause physical dependence and withdrawal syndromes, because even the person who took it for back pain, who never had psychiatric problems prior to the medication, when they try to stop taking it, all of a sudden they get psychiatric symptoms that manifest because they're reducing the dose of drug. And then when they present to a well-meaning but ill-informed practitioner, which is most of them, there are some, kind of diamonds in the rough who know about this. They'll say, oh, well, you have a new onset psychiatric condition. And then they'll get more medication instead of saying, you just reduced your diazepam, Valium, you're in withdrawal, and so we need to put you back up and taper you slower so that this doesn't happen.
Is something like Ambien also a psychiatric drug?
Yes, they work very similarly to the benzodiazepines. They're called Z drugs, but they have very similar mechanism of action to like Xanax, Klonopin.
Interesting.
So do we have studies, or are doctors aware of the long-term side effects or effects of these drugs?
Well,
you said somebody was on it from 7 to 40. Like, that's a huge amount of time. How could you even have that as a study?
Well, when you're talking about studies, most studies for drugs only last, on average, 8 to 12 weeks. Many of these drugs. So, we have some studies. And in the film, actually, we show how one study looked really, really, really good. I think it was Xanax.
Xanax, yep.
If you showed the very narrow time span, but anything beyond or out, the drug doesn't look good. But first of all, the drug trials are extremely expensive. So it is hard to afford for the pharmaceuticals, hard to afford long-term studies. But also they don't make the drugs look good at all. So we do have studies, but they're completely inadequate. And guess what? The people who are conducting the studies are those who are profiting from it.
Yeah.
So, these are not accurate studies. I mean, I shouldn't make such a blanket statement. Of course, there's some accurate studies, but you have to be careful about all that.
We had a interview that we did, maybe it was a year and a half ago or something, with her handle's the Crunchy Legal lady. Her name's Julie, and she came from a background of medical research.
Yeah.
And she was trying, in that episode, you go listen to it. She was explaining how these studies are done and how they're manipulated and how it's gotten, put out to the public and all of those things. Is a really interesting part of that conversation, if anybody is interested in going back to listen to that one.
I'm actually wondering, why is it, or why do you guys think that doctors immediately prescribe psychiatric drugs instead of discussing things like diet, lifestyle, therapy? I mean, I'm thinking even there's so many different modalities of therapy. You have obviously talk therapy, you have behavior therapy, you have EMDR, you have somatic, you have IFS. Like, there's just like tons of different therapy options out there. Why is it that drugs are the first go-to?
Therapy takes a long time, and a drug theoretically works within 2 weeks. And when I say works, it has an impact and makes the person thinking that it's working. I mean, it has an immediate impact, and that's a huge, we were talking all about, we're a quick fix society. Like, we want it now. We want to see the results now. So, and also I think the drugs are cheaper in the long run. Insurance will cover them for people. I don't think they're cheaper because we all know the huge health cost that all of this is bearing upon us. But from a person entering treatment, it's often quicker, easier, cheaper to go the medication route.
I could see, just to be a devil's advocate, like, I could see a doctor saying, well, I don't want to not put you on this drug and have you then commit suicide while we're trying to work through changing your diet or something. Like, I could see that as being the thought process.
Except for that all the labels warn that the drugs increase the risk of suicide. So
right. No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just like, if I were to try and understand that reasoning, that's where I would go with it.
Yeah.
too.
I mean, for somebody who's worked in medicine, I can kind of speak to both. So, people who are providing medical care have to, withhold the quote unquote standard of care. So if all of your colleagues are prescribing something for people and you're not, that makes you the outlier who isn't following standard of care. And if all the prescribing guidance says that if people present with X, Y, and Z, you're supposed to prescribe them this, you're acting within the standard of care. There's also just that
and that's a protection, right? If you act within the standard of care, you are essentially protecting yourself from malpractice. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, yeah. I'm sure you could still be sued, but it's a defense that you could use for, but yeah. And so, there's also that doctors have 10 minutes to spend with people. It's incredibly high stress working and being expected by your employer to see, a patient every 10 minutes. And so you don't get the time that you need. I also think that some of the responsibility falls on the patient. I'll take blame myself for being a patient who went in and just accepted a prescription without doing research on it. I didn't read all the fine print. I mean, the paper that comes with the medicine is the size of a king size bedspread. You have to read all of the tiny little lines, but all that stuff is real in there. It's, I think we're just naive and we think, oh, my doctor wouldn't give me something that would harm me. But medicine is, the third leading cause of death in the United States is medical error. It's not a safe place to go, and so you should do things that keep you out of doctors' offices. But I think, like I said, people aren't being taught that as kids. They don't know how to eat healthy. They don't know about their bodies. They don't know how to self-soothe, and that all of these modalities even exist. And patients are busy. They have kids and families and jobs. And so, like Lynn said, they want everything quickly, like we all do, because nobody has time.
And it's all expensive, right? Therapy is expensive. Mm-hmm. All those different sorts of therapies, like trying to find the one that works for you or your kid. Not just sticking with what, I know our insurance would not have covered any of that when I was, in that postpartum era. Like I wouldn't have had anything covered.
Yeah. But let me tell you what's really expensive is getting off of psych meds. I didn't have a job for 15 years because I was so disabled by the withdrawal syndrome. So how many millions of dollars do you think that cost me? I had to be on disability. And then the medical care that you require to prove that you're disabled by these drugs, that's hard. I had to shop around constantly to doctors because nobody believed that these drugs could harm somebody in this way. So here I am, a PA, my dad's an anesthesiologist, and we had trouble being believed. So imagine just like a lay person, how hard of a time they have proving their case that these drugs harmed them. It's becoming more known now. There's all kinds of things in, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. There's manuals that are out now that weren't when I got ill in 2010. So it's come a long way. But still, I hear from patients all the time who are like, I can't find any doctor to help me come off of these meds. Nobody knows how to help me.
What were some of your withdrawal symptoms, if you don't mind sharing?
I felt like I went completely crazy. Like I would call my dad at work and be like, I'm going crazy. Like my mind would race 1,000 miles a minute. I forgot my name, my birthday. So I had tons of like terrible memory problems. One of the more distressing ones is something called depersonalization and derealization, where you feel just sort of trapped inside yourself, like you're not real and the world is not real. It's like dissociation, essentially. Crippling panic and anxiety that was just constant for no reason. Insomnia. I had a symptom called akathisia, which leads a lot of people to suicide. It's like an incessant urge to move and pace where you can't sit still. Burning
Tell about
skin.
your feet, Nicole, when you had the akathisia, when you would.
Yeah, I mean, I just paced until my feet were like bloody and blistered because I could not stop moving. And some people have that for years where they just frantically pace all over the place. I just had a biopsy done on my leg the other day for small fiber neuropathy, which started post-withdrawal, where, the skin sensation in my legs is muted, but also I have extreme like ripping, twisting, shredding nerve pain from my spine down to my toes. And that's still present. And I haven't been on any of the meds since 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so what happens to someone like Nicole is that someone presents these issues to their doctors who don't connect the dots. So they get sent to specialists, and then they get treated for neuropathy. They get treated for the anxiety with another. And so nobody has defined or no one understands withdrawal and the huge, broad topic that it is. So then all these specialists get involved. And I just think,
yeah. And all they want to do is give you more drugs. Luckily, by the time I went into severe withdrawal, I had figured out what was wrong, that it was the meds making me sick all along, that I was in severe withdrawal from them. So I stopped accepting prescriptions and things from, mainstream medical doctors and figured out pretty quickly, I'm going to have to save myself from this nightmare with the help of this whole online community that exists, this underground space, which you guys are probably familiar with ancestral eating. I think you guys are allies, actually, because whenever we talk about psychiatric drug problems with people in the ancestral space, we're believed because you guys know the impact of food and choices on health. And so why wouldn't you believe the impact of chemicals on health, But lots of other spaces, you talk about this and you get either people tell us we're pill shaming, which I find interesting because when, Toyota sends me a recall on my car, I'm not upset that they've warned me about a safety issue. But that tells you how connected people are to their diagnoses and how it's like almost like an identity sometimes for people, and they feel threatened if you're just providing information like, hey, I took this drug and it made me really sick, so you should do some research before you stop taking them,
Yeah, like when we have screenings, there will always be someone in a screening of Medicatinɡ Normal who will say, this drug saved my life. I'm so happy I was on it. How could you be making a film like this? You're taking away. And we always, always say, no, we're not trying to take something away from you that worked. We're just trying to shed light on something that doesn't work for many, many people. And just because it helped you, which is good, it's good, it helped you, it can harm other people. So we're not trying to be anti-medication, but people need to know.
So my brother-in-law wrote a book called Hocus Focus, all about his experience of being put on ADHD medication as a young child and growing up with all of that, and then his deciding to get off of it. And it's basically just his story and his experience. And he has told me the same thing. He says, anytime I promote my book, any single time, there's always somebody who's like, why would you, say I shouldn't be taking, I think it's Adderall. It saved my life. It made me able to pass whatever classes I was taking, get through high school. And he's like, it's not about that. Like, if you feel like that's what you need to do and it's helping you, great. But like, this is my experience. And essentially he says it's ruined his childhood.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so interesting that people take it so personally. I think Christine and I run into that a lot with food things too. People
Totally.
take things so personally when we're just like, listen, goldfish is not good for your children. They're just not. And people are like, don't take my goldfish, you know?
Yeah, especially the Old Bay ones. They're the best. Yeah.
Are you from Maryland?
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Old Bay on everything.
Yeah. But there's the lady, actually, just quickly, her name's Margaret Heffernan, and she does a TED talk about a concept called willful blindness. And I think it explains a lot of people's responses to topics like this. It's just a concept called willful blindness, and we're all willfully blind to some degree. And her challenge for people is how to exist in this world and be less willfully blind about things that can harm us. And that's kind of all we're asking people to do, is let everybody have a seat at the table, you know, not shun the people who were harmed and say, well, you can't tell your story here. These drugs work and they save lives.
Yeah. I mean, I'm of the opinion that the truth will out if you're, you know, if you give it space. Like, more discussion is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just served on a panel with the FDA, and they've put, finally, it only took them since 1960s when the first benzodiazepines came on the market. So how many years is that? A long time. But we have official guidance from the FDA, or paid for by the FDA, put forth by the American Society of Addiction Medicine and endorsed by like 10 other medical bodies, for official guidance on deprescribing benzodiazepine drugs. So it's an admission that they cause physical dependence, they cause withdrawal, and that we have to follow guidance on how to properly and safely and carefully get people off of benzodiazepines. We don't have anything for antidepressants like it yet, but we're pushing to, you know, make that the next order of business. And
so doctors can now have access to this, and do they share it with their patients, or can patients look it up? How does that work?
Yeah, anybody can access it. It's just on the ASAM, American Society of Addiction Medicine website. If you just type in asam.org, I believe, and benzodiazepine guidance, the whole thing is there for anybody to view. And there's also textbooks on deprescribing now. This one is probably the biggest name one. It's called Maudsley Deprescribing. It's purple, and you can get it on Amazon. And it goes through how to essentially taper people off of benzos, antidepressants, gabapentinoids, and Z drugs, which are like the Ambien sleeping pills.
Ooh,
so is that a book for doctors, or?
Yes.
It's doctors. It's aimed at clinicians. It's very clinical, but lots of patients who, again, go knocking on doctors' doors and get nowhere will buy it and teach themselves how to get off, you know.
It seems to me that it would be very intimidating as a patient, to just go, you know what, forget this. Nobody's helping me the way I want to be helped. I'm just going to get this book and do it myself. I don't know if it's a societal assumption that I am like
not as smart as a doctor.
No, not that. No, because I've talked about that a lot. Like, I can read, I can figure things out. But when it comes to psychiatric things, there is in my brain like some sort of, I can't handle that, it's too big. It's too much of like, I don't understand it.
But when you're failed by everyone who's supposed to know, you just have this awakening of like, no one's coming to save me. I'm going to have to do this myself if I'm going to get out of this cobweb that I'm caught in. And everybody else is doing it in these groups. And so you've got people who've walked the path ahead of you to help you. There's coaches. I spend hours of my day sitting with people in this space who are like, okay, teach me how to do this, because a lot of the doctors too, even the ones who are collaborative, they're like, I'll write you for whatever form of this drug you need to get off of it. You need liquid, I'll send it to CVS today. But I don't know how to do it. You know, they're honest, and the patients are like, it's okay. I've learned and I'm going to do it, you know, and we'll learn it together. And that's a lot of what's happening right now. I even have physicians who will sit in on the coaching that I do to learn. They want to be taught because they don't know what they're doing.
Well, that's really interesting.
I mean, Corey, I feel like it mirrors a lot of in the nutrition world. You know, there's so many people that come to Ancestral Health because of health crises, and they have been failed by the medical establishment. And so they're like, fine, we're going to do this on our own. I mean, there's an entire classification of autoimmune disorders. And there's one woman who healed herself after 12 years of being literally bedridden and almost died. And she did it with soup. And I'm not even exaggerating. And now she teaches other people how to heal themselves from dysautonomia and neurological disorders. And it's all through food.
Yeah. There's some intersection in our worlds too, because when people get this sick from psychiatric medications, they're looking everywhere too for anything that can sort of hold up their bodies because your nervous system is just in collapse.
Yeah.
And so they start realizing like, oh, maybe the answers all along have not been external to me. They've been, you know, really simple things like, what am I fueling my system with? You know, sleep hygiene, stuff like that. So I learned about paleo, primal, ketovore, carnivore, all of those things for the first time in psychiatric drug withdrawal because I was trying to help myself be as healthy as possible to survive the withdrawal. But also I had this light bulb moment of like, why am I fighting my ass off to survive this horrible withdrawal syndrome to just like eat potato chips and be sick from something else? Like I realized in that moment, you have nothing without health. And so I wanted to be healthy all over, not just like get off psych meds and go back to status quo.
In fact, there's an entire new initiative in the world of psychiatry called metabolic psychiatry. And it's a thing. I was at the IMMH conference, which is integrative mental health people. Integrative means, yes, they can be using regular psychiatric drugs, but they're beginning to utilize vitamins and supplements and things like that to either enhance or replace. And at that conference last year, which was in Washington, D.C., there was a group of the keynote speakers and others who were going to march on Washington to sort of declare themselves or to declare the metabolic psychiatry movement, which is essentially the understanding that you guys have been talking all along about the foods. Psychiatry is not just a chemical imbalance in the brain. It involves an entire lifestyle change, which is diet. And so this is big now. They're doing a lot of metabolic psychiatry trials one is being conducted at Stanford that my beloved family member was entered into for the keto diet. And they're finding that ketosis, if you read the work of Chris Palmer, ketosis can actually, it's a state where your body, you do high fat, medium protein, and low carb diet, puts you into a state of ketosis, which births mitochondria. And mitochondria, according to the theory of metabolic psychiatry, is the root of all evil. If you have a death of mitochondria, it can be behind all sorts of chronic illnesses, which I'm sure you guys have looked into this. But in the psychiatry, there is now an awareness beginning in the psychiatry movement of this. So I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that movement will gain traction, that the tapering movement, which Nicole is very much a part of, will gain traction, and people will just simply start to feel better. So it's going to, in a way, take care of itself.
I think Dr. Eid, in addition to the scientists that Lynn mentioned, Dr. Georgia Eid has a great book on treating mental health with food as well.
What is it called?
Change your diet, change your mind. I like
yeah, I
that
actually
one.
think I have heard that.
Yeah, it's very patient facing, so the book is easy for lay people to read. Whereas the one by who did you mention, Lynn?
Chris
Chris
Palmer.
Palmer. It's very scientific, like
Yeah.
a lot of science in that one. So
I mean, I kind of feel like after COVID, a lot of people started talking about metabolic health more and realizing that actually it's a very big driver in underlying conditions, and we need to focus on our metabolic health. So that's one good thing that came out of that.
well, I think COVID helped too, and like sort of moving the needle towards people realizing that you can be harmed by interventions from medicine, that it's not super safe always to just, get medical interventions, or that chronic, like even having a virus can lead to chronic health problems, which sort of works for us in the protracted withdrawal space. Like, you can insult your body and have it last for a really long time. So we're not making it up. It's not all in our heads. It's real. These things can go on for a really long time.
I know that was actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask you guys. And maybe, I mean, both of you, Lynn, especially since you sort of became interested in this and made a film on it. When you were doing the research, did you happen to see any other links to other pharmaceutical products? And I'm thinking particularly vaccines, in which, the short-term study always favors them. And when we're looking at really long-term studies, then we start seeing bigger health issues that are just not discussed. And I don't know, did you sort of go down any other rabbit holes that you want to share about?
Huge rabbit hole right next door, parallel track, was the whole OxyContin Purdue Pharma saga. I mean, if you really start to read, you can see parallel playbook. Study comes out, misquoted, facts are fudged, using a sales rep force who are largely uninformed about what they're selling. That opioid and creating pain. So we created psychiatric pain, but the world of pain, and all the pain clinics that cropped up that were really there to sell opiates to the masses. The sort of masquerading fact for myth, like there were many myths about the world of pain that justified taking a prescription of OxyContin that are very, very similar to what we were dealing with in the psychiatric drug discovery in this whole journey. Very similar. And the vaccine saga, a lot of information was thrown at the American public, a lot of fear. I mean, I think fear, if you really look at the fear is behind the sales of really any medication. Fear was behind pain. Fear was behind the vaccine. Not that the vaccine wasn't based on certain principles that I agree with, but there was a frenzy and a lot of information thrown at the American public, and no one was really looking underneath at the facts.
And if you look at the history of medicine too, I mean, it's there's a long history of failed interventions that we discover after the fact are harmful. And it's the people who are the guinea pigs, because like you said, we've discussed, the trials are short, and it's the humans who are utilizing these interventions. And then we find out, look up how many things have been taken off the market after the fact for how harmful they are. So it just happens over and over again.
And I just want to add, it's not just that the trials are short. Many of them are fraudulent. And this may get you guys in trouble, but there's something right now out there, a group of very, very well-respected scientists, one of them from University of Pennsylvania, who have looked into something called the STAR-D trial. The STAR-D trial came out in about around 2010, that era, which it was the largest trial proving safety and efficacy of antidepressants ever, paid for by taxpayer money, like more than $35 million. And this group of scientists have gotten a grant to re-evaluate all the data that was generated in that trial, and their results are completely different than what our journals, our medical journals, spun out and our media spun out in 2010. The data is on the Yale British Medical Journal server right now for any research or scientist to look at, and people can draw their own conclusions. But essentially, it's a fraudulent trial. STAR-D was fraudulent.
And it was the basis for antidepressants blowing up. Yeah.
Totally the basis for antidepressants. And you guys, hopefully the Wall Street Journal is going to be running a piece on this, but the news has been out there, but our media won't, our media does, we're so propped up by advertising dollars. It's real stories on real fraudulence and unethical trials are not making it to the average American news ingester. You know,
that's insane. That is something that you would assume would be like headlines, huge headlines.
Huge.
Yeah. But if you tell the story, you know, I see it happen all the time when I talk about these things. Like people's eyes glaze over and they think I'm like one of those tinfoil hat people that's gonna, you know, and I'm like, I'm forever changed by this experience because I just view the world differently. It's like once you've seen behind the curtain, you can't unsee what you know, and you just think more critically. And, you know, but a lot of people aren't like that. And sometimes I miss my naivete. It was easier to just not know about these things and just kind of like go through the world in that way. But you're way more at risk doing that, I think.
You know, I actually, speaking of fraud, I'm curious because this was not brought up on the documentary at all, was the fact that the U.S. is one of 2 countries in the world that advertises drugs to the American public. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
I wish it would stop immediately.
Yeah, me too. And we've talked to there, you know, there are many doctors, psychiatrists out there who describe, you know, they may even be aware that what they're doing, the prescribing of a certain drug is not the best pathway forward, but they get so assaulted by patients who rightly so want relief of some kind. But if doctors have said to us, if we don't prescribe, they're just going to go on to the next doctor. I mean, there's a huge problem that this causes.
Yeah, it's true. I saw the same thing when I was working in urgent care before I got sick with antibiotics, where you would say, you know, I think this is a virus. We need to give it time. And they would freak out and demand Z-Paks, you know, for like the sniffles times 1 day. And then, you know, you're worried about antibiotic resistance and MRSA and all these things. But yeah, patients are also part of the problem here.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense to me. Like, if we are, as a country, I think we are so... Maybe it just has to do with the fact that we want things right away. You know, we can order our Amazon packages and they're here tomorrow.
You can order your drugs on Amazon too, by the way.
Yeah, I just learned that. The fact that we just want things done immediately, which again, you know, is what's going on with the whole Ozempic thing too. But we are just we're like averse to working things out and letting them work themselves out or putting in the work to try and make them change.
Human experiences. I feel like we're averse to just human experiences.
Oh man.
I mean, I don't want to discredit anybody that is going through grief or anxiety or anything like that. But I also think that these are valid and normal human emotions that we need to, that we feel.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at it from an ancestral perspective, which is the lens I try to use now a lot on things like we evolved this way, I think, for a reason. Like when you think about why do we cry? Why do we grieve? There has to be a purpose to it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be part of us, and maybe that's part of the healing. And so lots of people you'll meet who got medicated for grief soon after something tragic happened will say, I never actually healed from the grief. I was just numb for X amount of years. And then when I came off the medication, the grief was still there. The problem,
You still have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I do think there have been people that have told me, look, my medication. Now, these are people who had a relatively easy time getting off of them. So there are people like that. But my medication, I had a trauma. It was so earth-shattering to me that I was dysfunctional, unable to do anything. The medication numbed me and took away some of the trauma and pain, leveled me out, allowed me to get to myself to a therapist, allowed me to start that important work, and then I discontinued the medication. Now that, in a perfect world where these medications don't cause dependency, that's fine. The problem is, you don't know whether you're going to be one of these people who can use a medication properly in a short amount of time to really level and numb yourself and then get off of it easily. Because look at Nicole. If she'd done that, she wouldn't have been able to actually get off of it. So
yeah, there's in the FDA literature, because they did a huge literature review as part of their $2 million grant. There were people reporting physical dependence to benzos in as little as a week of exposure.
Whoa.
Oh, they'd only been on it for a week and they've already
developed.
Wow. So we're talking you need to have a very short amount of time on it.
Yeah, it can happen quickly. Yeah. But the studies for antidepressants that are just coming out now are showing that withdrawal becomes more severe and protracted in people who've been exposed to the antidepressant for longer.
Okay.
So if people are going to use something in the way that Lynn is talking about, it's in the literature that getting off quicker, kind of decreases your chances of having these worse outcomes. So really, using drugs in as low a dose as possible for short a period as possible, and then coming off, still tapering to make sure that you're not one of the people who's going to have a catastrophic withdrawal, even though you've been on a short time, because those people exist too. That's sort of the best you can do. That's the compromise, between just not taking medications at all. If people want to try it, they should know that short-term low dose is always, better for managing risk.
Yeah. I was actually wondering, because I noticed that there were 2 veterans that you guys followed in the film. Do you feel like veterans are targeted more than the average person, out of curiosity?
Yeah. Although I've seen some civilians on tons of polypharmacy too. But yeah, just by way of like PTSD, I think being so medicated. But, in defense of the VA, they were one of the first places to have guidance on benzodiazepines and say that they're not appropriate for PTSD, even though they were still being, way over and misprescribed within the VA. But they did, take efforts to try to curb benzodiazepine prescribing, at least.
I've got a brother in the military, so, just thinking about him.
Yeah.
It seems though that women are more highly prescribed, at least like anxiety or anti-anxiety medications and things like that than our male counterparts.
That's true. Yeah.
Is that just because like women are so much more they're carrying the, I don't know.
Corey,
I hate to say,
we know why this is. We had an entire episode on it. We know why this is, because women were not meant to live isolated. We are meant to live with other women. We're meant to have help constantly. I know that this is going to be super controversial for me to say this, so I'm so sorry, but we as women are being sold a lie that we can have families and a job. It's really, really hard to do that. We're burning ourselves at both ends. And I think, frankly, we're just stressed the bleep out. Like, society is stressing us out.
Yeah, it has to do with hormones, and women, are in our society more allowed to be emotional and show our emotions. But, I don't want to make broad generalizations, but I think male doctors sometimes don't know what to do with that. And just sort of, the old ads of the hysterical housewife. Yes. I mean, that's what all of the benzo advertisements were back in the day, was the neurotic woman.
Those were crazy, by the way.
Yeah. And they're real.
And what they did to women too.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, I saw something on Reddit one time that kind of made me be like, oh, it was actually a transgender person who was male at birth, transitioning to female and using estrogen therapy to do so. And wrote this whole thing saying, I never understood women before, but now I have emotions. I never felt anything like this before in my life or whatever. And I was just like, maybe we are vastly different between men and women and what we feel and experience. And there's this inability to sort of understand, women's emotions. I don't know, something to think about, but.
I mean, it's my understanding that all of the studies that are out there are, there are no studies done specifically for women, meaning they're only studying women on psychiatric drugs, or they're only studying women on, I don't know, whatever.
I mean, they aren't only studying women.
Yeah, did I not say that correctly? Sorry. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was, I don't know if I helped clear it up or not. There are no studies that are specifically studying
just
only
women.
Right. Yeah.
It's usually healthy male volunteers of a certain age. And so the same thing goes for people of color, or they're typically not in the study sample of, there's a lot of unknowns as to well, how does someone of Asian descent handle this medication, who is 10 years old versus someone who's 75, who's a woman versus someone who's a man. We don't have answers to all of those questions.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And specifically, drugs are studied one at a time. It's not oh, this vet is on 10 things. What happens when you mix them all together? Let's look at that. Zero evidence for that kind of thing.
Yes, that kind of crosses over into other aspects of medicine as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was insinuated in the film that there is a protection act for these pharmaceutical drugs or not, meaning that consumers cannot sue for liability or something like that. There was one clip in it where it sounded like you guys were maybe talking about it, but it wasn't totally clear to me. So for example, with vaccines, there is a Protection Act of 1986. Consumers cannot sue vaccine manufacturers. They are completely liability free. Is there anything like that when it comes to psychiatric drugs? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, people take them for such a long period of time before they figure out that they've been harmed by them. And now the drug is old and, they're on a generic by that time. But you can sue your medical provider. We have some cases now coming forward of successful litigation against prescribers. I'm actually interviewing an attorney who just settled a $1 million plus benzodiazepine lawsuit on the 26th. So I'll be interested to hear that case. So there's been some litigation. And now we were talking about standard of care before, because there's deprescribing guidance that's official from medical bodies. I think that establishes standard of care for prescribing and deprescribing benzos. So if you act outside of that guidance, I mean, I'll have to ask the attorney, but I believe you probably have a better case for suing your provider if they're not prescribing and deprescribing in the way that this guidance is advising.
I feel like there's been a lot of recent, maybe not super recent, but like within the past 10 or 15 years, recent stories about celebrities doing this. And as much as I hate the celebrity culture, I do think that it's probably helpful to have those stories coming out and have those people who have, huge platforms, either with like they unfortunately passed away from an overdose of a prescribed drug, or they are themselves just saying, I'm not going to be on this anymore. I think those are really helpful. And I think that it sheds a lot of light on the situation.
Yeah, there's been a few. There was I think it was a Philadelphia Eagle who had antidepressant withdrawal and he missed some NFL games. That was in the paper. There's Jordan Peterson had a severe benzodiazepine withdrawal. His daughter, Michaela, had a terrible antidepressant withdrawal experience. And I think Kate Hudson's brother or something had antidepressant withdrawal. I could be wrong on that one, but he's also an actor and came forward about his antidepressant withdrawal too. There's some rappers that have talked about, stuff. So yeah, it's, we're always grateful when somebody comes forward who's famous and uses their platform to talk about it. Although then you get into the controversy of, Jordan Peterson is so polarized. And so then everyone's like, why are you talking to Jordan Peterson? And it's like, well, he's just a person, whether you like his politics or not, who had psych drug withdrawal. So he's important to this conversation,
Yeah, we have that a lot as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I would love to transition now to just talk a little bit about any actionable steps for listeners that maybe they know somebody, maybe they themselves are in this position.
Or maybe they have like a kid who is in 3rd grade and they're being told you got to put your kid on ADHD for them to be able to graduate. Like,
yeah. Actually, let's start with that. Yeah. I don't know, any advice?
So let me ask you, where would you go for education? Because that seems like just an ocean. Where would you start?
There's, like I said, the Maudsley deprescribing guide has tons of referenced things.
And you said you can get that on Amazon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Read the insert.
Yeah, the FDA labels. Most of it's there, although some of it, actually the benzos did not get the warning about physical dependence and protracted withdrawal until I think it was 2022. So it took a long time. But yeah, so sometimes the stuff is missing, like PSSD is not in the labels. They're fighting to get it put in there. But
that's at least a place to start, is to read the label and then go down whatever rabbit holes you find there.
Yeah. And also there's, I'm a big proponent now for people who if you're going to take something, go look around. I mean, before you buy something on Amazon, you read the reviews, right? Like it only has 1 star. It's a piece of junk. Like, I'm not buying that, There's patient groups of people who have taken these medications all over Reddit, all over Facebook. You can read what they're experiencing and just decide if that's a risk that you want to take for yourself. There's a website too called Mad in America where people talk about their experiences with psychiatric drugs and coming off of them.
Did you say Mad in America?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it .com?
.com.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I know another good place too is there's Cochrane collaboration, and then the one in Canada is Therapeutics Initiative. So these are two independent nonprofits, I believe, who don't take industry funding, and they try to look objectively at evidence for medical interventions. And you can look and see when they do big literature reviews, like what they decide if something is worth taking or what the risks of it are. So those are two good places to look at their information as well. RXISK. So it's meant to be like risk with an X for like prescription, RXISK.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But to go back to your question, in addition to education, which Lynn is saying, I think alternatives, like we've discussed, people should try safer things first. Because all of medicine is risk-benefit analysis, right? Like, does the thing that I have bother me so much that I'm willing to risk this, like a surgery or, something really big to correct it, when I know that, you could die on a surgical table, So everyone's always making these risk-benefit analyses. And you should do the same thing with, is this just mild anxiety, or am I like not sure I can live with this anymore, and then make decisions based on that. And also exploring what are some things that work for other people that aren't drugs, like I said, to get off of psych meds, I had to use all of the things that I wish I just would have done in the first place, because they worked. They worked for an extreme state that I wasn't in before I took psych meds. And so if they helped with that, they would have helped with the mild work-related stress that I took meds for in the first place, which was, things like yin and restorative yoga, simple things like long walks, being outside, working less, less stress, breathing exercises, taking baths, massage, Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it sounds simple and silly, but I think if people are being honest, they haven't tried some of those things in some cases,
I have a friend, and I'm, we're modern ancestral mamas, so I'm definitely going to share this story, but whose husband went through like a month of a depressive period, and she got really nervous about him. And Corey's going to laugh. She literally made him drink a liver tonic every single day. So raw liver every single day for 2 weeks. And she said it went away and he was fine. And there has been, we both know, Corey and I know, there has been studies on liver. It really is mood boosting and energy boosting, but she swears by it. She's like, yeah, my husband never had to go on antidepressants. He just drank raw liver tonic for 2 weeks. Oh yeah, no, it ended. And he's on a full keto diet now, and he's never had issues like that again.
Yeah. Well, most people don't realize either is that most cases of depression are self-limiting anyways. In studies, if you leave them be, they just go away on their own. And so we're doing interventions for things that typically resolve without some risky, medication as well. So
fascinating. Wow. Okay. So if a listener is currently on a psychiatric medication, what do you recommend they do?
Okay, don't freak out from listening to us and hearing my story. My withdrawal was so severe because I did the wrong thing, which was figure out these drugs were bad for me. I checked into like a detox place because I had no clue how to get off of them. And I just wanted them out of my body once I figured out what was making me ill. And they will rip you off and put you in a severe state of drug withdrawal that is what leads to this protracted syndrome. Okay. So don't stop taking your medication abruptly. Don't make a drastic cut in dose abruptly. Like, now is when you have to get educated for sure. You can join some of the withdrawal groups on Facebook, on Reddit. They're usually named based on the drug or drug class that you're trying to get off of, and educate yourself there. The Maudsley book is like the gold standard now for deprescribing. The ASAM guidance is out there as well for benzos. and, see if you have a collaborative doctor by bringing up the topic in the first place. Like, hey, I'm thinking about coming off of these. I want to know if you'll support me and like allowing me to do a really long, slow taper. Will you prescribe liquid for me? And if they say no, well, you need to be finding a new physician, somebody who's going to work with you and believe that this is real and give you all the time you need and require to come safely off of the medication at a speed that your body allows for. And for some people, that's 6 months. And for some people, it's 4 years. It just depends on how quickly your specific system will let go of the drug. And that's different for everybody.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. All right. I want to give you guys, as we're coming to the end of our show, I want to give you an opportunity to say whatever else you feel like is really necessary in this conversation. And then I want to give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can see the film and connect with you and all of that.
Yeah, we're on YouTube now for free, finally. So everybody can watch it there and, share it with friends, family, acquaintances, and just have conversations.
That's the one I saw. Yeah. The veteran one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Lynn. Thank you for making the film in the first place. Thank you for coming on our show and having this conversation. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
How
everybody.
Are you guys?
We are, first of all, we have to put the caveat out there. This is not medical,
Totally.
To make your own choices, talk to your people.
Provider.
Don't take this as medical advice. And then let's do the whole, you can find us where. So Christine is at Nourish the Littles. I am at For Nutrient's Sake. The show is at Modern Ancestral Mamas. Those are all on Instagram because that is the only social media that Christine and I use. You can find the show on Apple. You can, Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on YouTube. We beg you to leave a review, to leave comments. If you comment on YouTube, we can answer those comments. If you send us messages on Instagram or comment on those posts, we can respond to those as well. We are thrilled to have conversations with you guys. It is one of our favorite things to do. And we really appreciate our listeners, everybody, for listening to the show, for sharing the show. That is the best way to help us grow the show, is just by sharing it on your socials, texting it to your friends, commenting, leaving reviews, all of those things. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. And that is all we have for today. So see y'all later.